Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Integrations Unpacked, Maximizing Efficiency and Outcomes in Event Management. We're so glad you're here with us. My name is Amanda Law. I'm the Event Marketing Manager at Cadmium, and it is my pleasure to be with you today as your MC. We're thrilled to have you, and this will be a very insightful session on integrations, what they are, how they work, if you need them, if you don't, which ones are the best case scenarios, etc. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today Brian Carey. Brian is the technical project manager for integrations for Cadmium. I wanted to make sure I said that correctly. Brian brings over a decade of experience in project management with a focus on integration strategy and client experience. He's a certified PMP and a true pro when it comes to turning complex systems into streamlined solutions. Brian's passion lies in leveraging data and integrations to solve real-world pain points and improve outcomes for event professionals like yourself. So without further ado, let's dive in. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Amanda. All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm excited to present on Integrations Unpacked. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about understanding integrations. What is an integration? This might be an intimidating question, but I promise you use them all the time. So think Facebook signing with Google. You don't remember your credentials. You just hit that button. It authenticates using your Google credentials, and then you're able to share content with your friends, like your grandmother's post, and so on and so forth. The very same thing when you order a product from a vendor and you select pay using PayPal, you're using a secure source, an already proven secure source to authenticate your payment without entering your payment details, which can be sensitive into a vendor site. Integrations, simply put, is a software connection between two distinct systems or applications that enable them to share data and functionality. When implemented effectively, integrations create a seamless user experience for some users that minimize manual tasks, reduce siloing, and ensures that the systems talk to each other in real time or on a schedule. This can include everything from syncing users' credentials to passing registration data or session data between platforms. So within the context of Cadmium, we're going to compare integrations and APIs. While the two things are often used interchangeably, this isn't always the case. At Cadmium, the distinction between an integration and an API primarily relies on who performs the work and how the systems are connected. So let's start with integrations. An integration is a managed connection between a Cadmium product and a pre-approved third-party vendor. Cadmium handles the development effort on behalf of the client. Our team builds and maintains the connection for the exchange of data between the Cadmium platform and the vendor system, with the goal of eliminating redundancy and or eliminating manual data entry, whenever possible. With an API, this is a self-service option where the client and their technical team do the development themselves. We simply provide the API key and the documentation for the corresponding module. Clients can then utilize the endpoints to pull or push data from the supported modules by sending parameters appropriately formatted in the request as defined in the documentation. While this does offer more flexibility, it also requires more technical resources on the client's end. So in short, these two graphics here illustrate the primary differences. When you contract an API, you simply get the Eventscribe API and your development team does the work. Whereas when you get an integration, we build out the bridge for you, and that's the all-encompassing package. Now, common integrations. The most common integrations that we do here at Cadmium are hands down login integrations. And the most common one that you're probably familiar with is the single sign-on, the one that we alluded to earlier with the Facebook, Google login example. Single sign-on, or also known as SSO, functions as such. It enables a user to log into the Cadmium product using their existing credentials from an external source. So this is typically an AMS, account management system, or a CRM, or another organizational identity provider. Rather than requiring the user to create a new account, they're able to use their already existing username and password that leverages the authentication from the external trusted source. When implemented, the user is redirected to authenticate on their home page. They enter their credentials, and then they're redirected successfully upon login into the Cadmium product that grants them the correct access and pulls over the data as defined appropriately in the integration. All of this is done in real time. So on the very first instance of Amanda logging in to the Cadmium Eventscribe product, it'll pull over her email, username, her first name, last name, and then her unlock code's access level is defined. We'll get in that in a moment. Very similar to this, we have the query to authenticate integration, and it functions very similar to the single sign-on. The user, instead, with this one, of using their username and password, they use their username and badge ID. And this is most commonly used for, come on, please. Excuse me. The query to authenticate is exclusive to registration vendors. Instead of redirecting to an external login page, the user enters their credentials on that page inside of the Cadmium Eventscribe product, and they stay there, and we pull the data live at that point. If the user's credentials are valid, the registration system returns the user's data, which is then used to automatically create and pre-populate their Eventscribe profile. Field mappings for, let's talk about those. Field mappings for the Eventscribe products. As we just stated, we make a live call at the very moment the user clicks login. Your vendor's API will return a current version of the user's data in real time. The relevant fields are mapped as defined in the integration, as I said before. So the required ones are going to be first name, last name, email, and user ID. We also allow for custom fields and then other fields to be configured to allow us to define their access level and unlock codes. Access levels are used to partition access for groups of users based on what they need to experience within the Eventscribe product. It could be navigation tiles, elements that also are nested in tiles, and then presentation pop-up items such as evaluations. Lastly, unlock codes. So the most common use case for unlock codes would be if a user has a pre-conference session that they paid for. Only users that have paid for those sessions should be able to access them. And so to exclude other users who shouldn't be able to access them, you need to make sure that a code is passed over on this user's account. If you plan on using unlock codes, you should communicate this during your kickoff call and then with your Ed Harvester PM, because that will require some configuration on your end prior to the integration being live. Now, let's talk about the benefits of integrations. The main pain points. When integrations are not utilized, especially in complex text ecosystems, several pain points emerge, both for administrators and end users. The first of which being redundant data entry. Without integrations, client teams often need to manually enter or export or import data in between their systems. This increases the administrative workload and can delay critical processes like session setup, badge printing, and credit tracking. The second pain point is data inaccuracy and inconsistency. The more systems operate independently, the higher the likelihood of discrepancies, from mismatched attendee records to outdated session data. Manual handling also introduces the opportunity for human error, which can undermine reporting, analytics, and user trust, of which being credential fatigue. End users may need to create and manage multiple sets of login credentials to access different parts of the event ecosystem. Think your registration, your app, your learning portal, and now something else. This raises the barrier for entry for less tech-savvy users and can lead to login failures, password resets, and decreased overall engagement. If someone is having trouble engaging in log into the platform, more than likely they're not going to be truly engaged in your event or whatever presentation they need to see. A few scenarios when you might require an integration, when your desire is to improve your efficiency and attendee experience, such as many clients who turn on the integrations when they recognize the following challenges. Like I said before, a need for improved data accuracy and consistency. A client may have issue with their current system in which there's a significant delay when registration updates are made on attendee records, which can cause frustration on site. So think prior to an event, you have not registered for something, but you have a last minute option where somebody can sign up for this specific paid session. If this isn't reflected in real time, that could be a real pain point for the end user and lead to frustration. Whereas if you use an integration, it's possible to have this occur in real time. So as soon as the data is made available in your AMS, we're able to pull that into the Eventscribe product for your user to access right there in the moment. Also, another use case would be the desire to reduce your login friction. Clients often ask for a login integration when the audience is frustrated with juggling logins for their registration site, event app, and other tools. A centralized login experience boosts adoption and reduces help desk tickets. All right, so now that we've talked about what an integration is, let's talk about when not to use an integration, because I think this is just as important as knowing when you should use an integration, which we'll get into in a moment. While integrations can offer major benefits, they are not always the right fit for every use case and for every customer. There are situations where the risk or constraints outweigh the value, especially when key conditions for success are not in place. Here are common reasons we recommend not proceeding with an integration. Integrations require a full software development lifecycle, also known as the SDLC. Maybe you've seen that term. Even repeat integrations, which is very important to note. This runs from scoping and development to QA and client-side testing. All of these steps are imperative. While the timeline is compressed and unrealistic, corners may be cut in several of the critical phases. Inadequate time for scoping can lead to unclear or missed requirements. Rushed development may produce unstable or incomplete functionality. Limited QA resources increases the risk of bugs making in production. And insufficient client testing mean real-world problems go unnoticed until launch. Successful integrations require active client participation. When there's no dedicated point of contact or engaged stakeholders, projects often stall or go off track. Scoping sessions require someone who understands the client's workflow, data, and goals. With that person, ongoing communication is needed to respond to questions, share credentials, or provide vendor contact. It's also worth noting that testing cannot happen without someone verifying the results from the client's perspective. If the client can't commit resources, especially if they're technical, then it's very important to have your vendor as well to represent you on the kickoff call so we can make sure that we cover those bases as well. And lastly, this one is very important. And one of the first things you should check when you are considering whether or not doing integration with Cadmium is that Cadmium only supports integrations with a curated list of pre-approved vendors. This is for security, technical compatibility, and sustainability reasons. If a client is working with a vendor that is not on our pre-approved list, then in some cases, an API would be a viable alternative, such as if you are looking to push users to Eventscribe. A company who commonly does this is MCI, for example. All right, now we got the red tape out the way of what not to do. Let's talk about the best practices for integrations. So as I said before, what not to do, make sure that you do have a dedicated product owner. This is the person who owns the project internally, the person that I work hand in hand with to build out the integration for your team to fit your use case. This person needs to understand the data and business requirements and coordinate with your internal stakeholders, i.e. your marketing team, your event team, so on and so forth. They act as the liaison between Cadmium and any third-party vendors. If the PO is less technical, additional vendor support might be needed. And without someone steering from the ship from the client's end, integrations tend to lose momentum and miss important deadlines. And as I said before, every integration needs to go through the full software development lifecycle. And just to go a little bit more in depth of what occurs in each of these, as far as when we perform the integrations of Cadmium, in scoping, we define the objectives, data flows, endpoints, and edge cases for what's going to be built out. We're also going to note what will not be covered within the integration. Then, after I receive the requirements, I'll review them and then give a technical approval before I pass off to my developer. Our developers then build out the integrations according to the specs and do a preliminary test prior to moving to QA. Our QA team does internal validation for data accuracy, error handling, and more edge cases. This is all done to ensure that the integration is working properly prior to the client getting their opportunity to test it, which occurs in the next 7 days. Once notified, the client has, like I said, 7 days to run through the scenarios with their internal team, which is typically a select group of staff users, to go through all of the various registration scenarios to make sure all their bases are covered prior to launching to the user base. This is one of the most critical steps in any integration. Trying to skip any of the steps often leads to post-launch issues that are more costly and frustrating to resolve. Another reason you should probably use an integration, or a prerequisite, should I say, is clear scope and documentation. What will and won't be in the integration. The client and the vendor must be able to supply the requirements as per our kickoff call for us to build out the integration. Documentation on the vendor's endpoints may be needed in some specific niche use cases, particularly IMAS. Also, as a standard within software development, it's best practice to connect first to a staging environment and then production. We abide by that practice as well here in Capper. And lastly, the post-launch support plan. A successful integration doesn't end at launch. If there's a considerable amount of time between launch and the event, a second round of testing is recommended prior to the event in the case that there are any vendor issues. Client staff trained on what information they need to pass to us in the instance that there is an issue is also something that should be included as part of your post-launch support plan. An example of a ticket that would be sent to the integrations team to assist in the instance help is needed would include the client, the event, the module, the device type, think mobile app, whether you're using our, if you're using our Eventscribe app product, whether or not it's an Android or an iOS device is helpful, the number of impacted users, the account experiencing the issue if you have a specific user in their credentials, and then has the vendor been contacted as well. If you cover those bases, that'll allow us to helpfully reduce the amount of time that it takes to troubleshoot these issues and get you a resolution in real time. All right, so just to wrap things up here and put a nice bow on it, integrations aren't just technical, they are strategic. They save time, reduce user friction, and ensure better data across your ecosystem. Also, know when to say yes and when to wait. If timeline, resources, or vendor support isn't aligned, the risk might outweigh the benefits. Set your integration up for success. With a realistic timeline, an engaged client lead, clear documentation, and vendor alignment, your integration is positioned to deliver real value. Ask early, plan intentionally. Bringing up an integration needs early in the planning process will help avoid any last-minute headaches and ensure alignment across your teams. If you believe you need an integration or would like to explore your options, please reach out to your account manager early so we can get involved. If there's one thing that I wish that you would take away from this presentation is that the best integrations are not just technically sound, they are well-planned, well-supported, and built with a full event experience in mind. Thank you for joining. All right, I think we have some questions.
Hey, Brian, yes, thank you so much. That was great. That's a lot of great information packed into a very well laid out presentation. I'm impressed. I feel like I just learned a whole lot about something that I felt like I knew very little about. So thank you. We do have a few questions that have come in. The first one here, where can I find a list of all of your supported vendors for integrations? Does such a thing exist?
Absolutely. There is a link to our Freshdesk documentation. I can drop this here. Amanda, if I send it to you, can you share it with the
Absolutely. I'll put it in the email with the recording.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Wonderful. Yes, we do. All right. This individual asked, do subsequent integrations take the same amount of time?
That's a really great question. So as I stated before, all integrations, regardless of whether or not they're new or a repeat, will need to go through the SDLC, which includes us scoping out the integration, which includes having the kickoff call. I review the requirements, development to build it out, internal QA, then the client's testing. So sure, the time it takes for a repeat is going to be shorter, but it still does need to go through those phases. So the timelines that we give for new integrations are 8 to 10 weeks, and a repeat integration that we've done before, which is defined as the same vendor, same product. If we've done that, it'll be 6 to 8 weeks.
That's good. Thank you. All right, I have another question here. We've got a couple more coming in. If we contract an SSO integration, does this apply to all modules for that event?
This is, I guess, a fairly common question that I get from clients, and the answer is no. So integrations need to be contracted on a per event, per module basis. So if you have a single sign-on integration with, say, our scorecard, you will also need to have an integration set up for the education harvester if you're doing so, or the Eventscribe products. They are independent of each other, even though there are some commonality, like let's say the vendor requirements will probably be very similar across SSO for products. The Eventscribe one will be checking for registration. But in general, when you do need integrations for multiple products, you need to specify, because just having one is not going to cover the entire Eventscribe Cabium suite.
Got it. Okay, great. And here's one that just came in too. Can you and would you use an SSO and an API together?
That depends. So you can have the SSO. I'll try to take a crack at this, and then maybe you can offer some clarification if I'm not addressing your specific point. So the single sign-on, what that'll do is that'll allow you to create accounts in our system using ones that were in an external AMS. So think Merits, Nimble, NetForum, any one of those vendors. You can do that and be off to the races. Now, it depends on what you're doing with the API key. If you want to pull data from a module for analytics down the road or any other purpose like that, that's perfectly fine. But what I do not recommend, and you should not do under any circumstances, is push users to Eventscribe if you do have an integration in place. So that's something that probably should be discussed in further detail with your PM and your product team to ensure that your use case isn't going to cause any data issues down the line.
Got it. I think that answered it. I'll keep an eye here in case in case Melissa comes back with any further requests for clarification. We'll switch over to another question here, though, in the meantime. And this one, I'm hoping I am asking it correctly. How frequently is user data pulled, for example, if the registration status in our AMS changes?
Another very good question. So as part of our login integrations, we actually don't do a continual pull. There isn't, say, a job that runs every hour or on a daily basis to get the user's data. What instead happens is in real time, so when Amanda Law, when she logs into the Eventscribe product with her email password, we make a live call to, let's say, NetForum. That's the first one that came to mind. We make a call to NetForum to pull over the account information. So if the information has been updated there and saved, we have access to it in real time. There is no delay.
Sounds easy enough. All right. I'm going to give us another second here just to make sure there's not any new ones. We've got one more that I'll ask here for you, Brian, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Looks like we'll wrap up kind of early today, which is nice. We'll have a little extra time. Thanks to your succinct efficiencies pulling this together. I would love for you to give lessons to myself on how to do so. All right, let's see here. Can you share any common challenges that organizations have faced during the integration process and how they were overcome?
Sure. I would say the biggest challenge is making sure that we have what we need to build out the integration. So oftentimes if it's a vendor who, or a client who's never used an integration before and they're using, I guess, say IMIS, which is a little bit more of a configurable vendor that some of our clients do have. So what typically happens with that is when I'm notified that, hey, this is going to be an IMIS integration, we need a technical point of contact identified in addition to the project point of contact. And we'll have a call with us and our developer with their team, and then we'll hash out the details. We'll request any documentation as needed, review that, and after I review it, our developer reviews it, and then that allows us to proceed forward. Now, if that step is stalled, let's say you aren't able to schedule that call, that could cause a little bit of a delay. But if you are proactive in scheduling these kickoff calls as suggested when you receive these notifications in the appropriate time, this gives us built-in time to account for that and to overcome those types of obstacles.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we'll have one last question here. Can you give us an example of a successful integration that impacted positively an event outcome?
A successful integration that has impacted an event's outcome.
Mm-hmm. Like somehow improved that event.
Yeah, I would say, I think that the example that I gave earlier, it was really based in reality, in which there was a frustration with the client having to have a different account for the app provider they were previously using for their event. And then when they switched over to us and used the SSO, it was so much more of a seamless process. And then we also were able to streamline the user experience when it came to having pre-conference sessions and things of that nature, things that we just built out using unlock codes and to partition the access for the users. So I think a lot of people come to Cadmium to address those pain points, and one of the biggest ones, like I was saying, is the data redundancy and the user friction. Because when you have an event, you may have a pretty wide user group. Some people are more tech savvy, some people are less tech savvy. And so the simpler you can make it for your users, the more accessible it is, and typically the better of a return you have for your event.
Makes sense. Perfect. All right. Well, that's all of our questions. We'll go ahead and wrap up. Brian, I want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your insights and preparing for this presentation today and answering our questions. Thank you for unpacking integrations for us and helping us understand how to better drive efficiency and have better outcomes in event management. Thank you.